my D3. I'm just gonna go through the pages and like the general plot, I guess. So first it starts, the first page and the last page are the only ones that are really like set in where they have to be in the rest, because the timeline is sort of like wonky for me. They could go in any order really, but the first page is to just sort of establish that there was an event that caused this, like there was a clear before and after. And then it goes into how I just felt like I should establish that my memory around this time is really not great. And so this page was to just sort of be like, oh, I don't actually really know the order of how all this happened, and some of it, like there's a 2-year period where I literally don't remember much. And then thought it was important to talk about like how childhood trauma can sort of be more intense at times than trauma later in life, because when you're younger it sort of seems, at least if you like me, get lucky and get to grow up with a nice family with nothing bad happening, I suppose, it can really come as such a huge shock and sort of like mixes your whole world up. And then I just sort of briefly talked about how there were other, this is where it starts to get into the identity thing, and how there were other moments, like the example I used was when I was like, oh, I love Lady Galadriel because I'm hella gay, but then it was like, oh, there was literally no time to even think about that, because it was like, okay, now I have to go back to like just focusing on staying alive one more day, you know, and how stuff like that happened, and they're like literally couldn't pay any attention to it. And then I wanted to talk briefly about how a diagnosis can sort of latch onto that as a sense of identity, but then the dangers in that, because obviously that's not super healthy. And with all of this, I made it, they're like little thumbnails that were actually pretty small in my sketchbook. This is like they're really blown up images, and so I wanted to write a lot more about these things, but I could only write so small. So ideally, if this is just like the proof of concept, then it would be more in depth than this. And then next, it goes into more on like personal identity, and when people are like, oh, like tell me about yourself, and it's like, oh, I have no idea, like I really genuinely don't know, and sort of explains that a bit. And then I thought it was also important to briefly mention how when like my perception of the world got really messed up, and I couldn't really tell what was real, then it was like even harder to create a perception of myself from that. So that's what this page is. And then I wanted to include one page that was just like a big, I don't remember the technical term, but where it's just like one panel on the page, and that, or I guess I could talk more about that. That was just sort of like the moment that I remember being like, oh, I have no idea who I am, or like what's happening, or anything. And then the last page is like I mentioned with the D1, how I wished that I could like, oh, there's something else. Cool. How I wished I could like give it a nice resolved ending and be like, yeah, everything's good now, but truthfully I can't, and so I just sort of talked about how I try my best, I guess. And I just drew part of like my bulletin board or like tattoos on like ways that I have to like remind myself kind of parts of my identity that I think are there forever. And then there's some sources that I referenced. It's most definitely not 2015, so don't mind that. And these were mainly, I wanted my comic to actually just be really based on my own experiences, and so I didn't directly cite them in it, but I thought it was important to look up some sources and to just sort of make sure that this wasn't like just me, like that I can actually say this is effects of childhood trauma and like not just a June thing. So there's those. Yeah. So was there anything else I was supposed to talk about? Yeah, and so again, with it being audience appropriate, because there are a couple panels, like, okay, this one for example, if it will open, oh, it's really tiny. It's sort of, because it's still in this really iconicized style, but it's obviously kind of, could be somewhat unnerving image. And that's again because I decided not to make it children based, and it's sort of more of like young adults, like college people or older. Yeah, and the all the pages don't really connect super well with each other in order, but I did that on purpose because that's how it is for me thinking about those times. Yeah, so cool. That's the end. I guess I'll post the actual things. I am like 90% sure no one would actually look at them or probably watch this video to this point, so I'm gonna stop now. Okay, bye.